Raiders, we've read the comments and seen the feedback to the devs about arc enemies. Tune this, buff this, nerf that. Leapers, Rocketeers, and Bastions, they're just way too powerful, and their loot just isn't that good. Man, is that a hot take, and it couldn't be more wrong. And in this video, we're going to share exactly why. My name's Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today we're teaching you how to play smarter, kill faster, and easily defeat every arc currently in Arc Raiders. Every enemy we talk about in this guide will be chaptered and timestamped in the description below in case you're looking for some specific advice. But before we dive into each one, we need to talk about some foundational knowledge and tips that will make you a well-rounded player when it comes to confronting arcs. Whether you're new to the game or an experienced veteran, you should actively try to avoid encounters with arcs at all time for several reasons. Most of these encounters are noisy right from the start. When they spot you, they'll emit sound that other arc units and players can hear from a good distance away. Once they start shooting at you, or you start shooting back at them, that sound intensifies and amplifies, painting an even larger target on your back. The sheer amount of times we've matched up with random players who just try to kill everything they see and fail spectacularly in the process is incredible. And guys, if you think we're full of shit, just check out our playtime during the game's pre-launch testing, which has stretched back over a year. Bottom line, if you keep playing that way, aggroing everything, especially when you're undergeared, you're gonna die. Understanding aggro or aggression mechanics is vital, and it all starts with an enemy's field of vision. Undisturbed, every arc outside of Snitches and Spotters have a blue-colored eye and scanner that actively sweeps the area in front of them in a cone. They also have relatively predictable patrol patterns if you allow yourself the time to observe them before making any hasty moves. Always assume enemies that are around 100 to 150 meters away can detect you, and be aware that this applies even if you're on a different vertical plane. As long as you're outside that detection cone and not actively making sounds either from sprinting, breaching locked items, or firing your weapons, moving quietly can and will help you avoid 99% of all unnecessary arc encounters. If an arc detects a nearby sound, or you're showing just a little too much leg from behind that piece of cover, they'll become alerted, and their scanners will turn from blue to yellow. At that point, they'll break their patrol path and move towards the disturbance, attempting to suss out what's going on. As long as you don't panic, remain quiet, and use cover to mask your escape, it'll arrive at your previous location none the wiser, and after a short period of time go back to patrolling. Keep in mind that an alerted arc is a huge tell to enemy players keen enough to recognize the behavior, but so long as that sensor doesn't switch to red and you're sticking low and moving slowly, neither the bot or enemy teams have gained much info beyond that. When a bot is red or already engaged, enemy players will have all the info they need to either push your position because you're distracted or set up a nearby trap attempting to catch you off guard. At this point, you should strongly consider dealing with the threat as quickly as possible, then altering your planned route, because more than likely, a team is lying in wait. 9 times out of 10, this will keep your team from being ambushed by other players. The other part of the equation outside of knowing arc weak points is understanding how the different ammo types perform against these enemies. Light ammo is extremely effective at close to medium range against players, especially when their shields have already been removed. However, against arcs, light ammo is extremely ineffective. Sure, you'll be able to kill a few ticks, blow up a couple pops, and maybe tackle the occasional Wasp or Hornet if you know where to aim, but if coming into matches with only light ammo, you should avoid picking fights with enemies you stand no chance against, especially if you're rocking a free loadout with limited ammunition. If you do find yourself face to face with easier enemies, pull out your melee tool and take them down. It's much quieter and you don't waste valuable ammunition. Medium ammo is good all around, not particularly effective against anything, but also not ineffective either. It'll deal good damage to both players and arcs. Finally, there's heavy ammo, which can quickly break player shields and punch through the armor of arc enemies. Using heavy ammo, you'll be able to break the armor of most low-tier enemies with one well-placed shot to a weak spot, and on the higher-tier arcs, you'll be able to remove their armor plating, protecting their softer interior components. In our opinion, everyone should always be running at least one heavy weapon and filling that other slot with a weapon that utilizes a different type of ammunition. If you don't know what gun matches your preferred playstyle, never fear, because we have a complete breakdown of each weapon in the game already live on the channel. Even though they aren't difficult to kill, we have to talk about ticks. These little buggers can crawl on any surface and often lie in wait trying to ambush unsuspecting players. Over time, you'll learn their spawn locations on each map, but if you don't know them already, you just need to listen for their distinct sound cue as you enter their detection radius. This is your cue to either quickly turn and shoot it with a single bullet of any caliber, or break out your melee tool and prepare to dodge the incoming face-hugging attack. Once you do that, it'll skitter around once or twice before coming to a stop, preparing to leap again. This is your chance to melee it or blast it into a smoldering pile of alloy. Most of the time, we recommend the melee approach just to avoid drawing even more attention to yourself, because when a tick dies, they explode. Looting these will often award tick pods and arc alloy. Wasps are deceptively strong enemies if not dealt with quickly due to the sheer damage output of their machine guns. Once spotted, it'll attempt to get a good, reliable angle on you. It'll begin its target lock, and after a short delay, will release enough small arms fire to completely remove a raider's shield and deal a sizable amount of damage to your health. Like I said, deceptively strong. The good thing is, they are easy to kill if you know what you're doing. Simply target any of its thrusters with your weapons, and so long as you knock off 2 of them, it won't be able to sustain itself in the air, causing it to eventually crash into the ground and explode. If you're shooting the body, you won't deal nearly as much damage and could realistically waste an entire free loadout worth of ammo if you're not hitting the weak point. If you're using heavy ammo, you can quickly break the thrusters, and this certainly matters if faced with a swarm of these pesky enemies. Looting a Wasp will often yield arc alloy, Wasp drivers, and light ammo. Hornets are the heavily armored big brother of the Wasp, capable of taking an absolute beating from all ammo types if struck from the front. These relentless pursuers charge up a fast-moving taser projectile that will stun and deal significant damage to any player hit by the attack. They have 4 thrusters, just like the Wasps, but the 2 in the front, as well as the body, are encased in armor, allowing these enemies to shrug off most attacks from light and medium ammo. The key to taking down a Hornet, regardless of the ammo type you're using, is to take out both rear thrusters that are completely unarmored. These thrusters go down just as fast as the Wasps, requiring very little ammo to break, and doing so will send the Hornet plummeting to the ground. These enemies will often contain arc alloy, arc power cells, medium ammo, and Hornet drivers, which can be used just like a showstopper grenade to stun enemy arc units. Once you know how to effectively defeat Hornets, it's almost always worth taking them out for their valuable loot. If there's one enemy in Arc Raiders that you really should just avoid outright, it's the Snitch, another drone-type enemy that doesn't have any offensive capabilities. Instead, these act as Arc's recon units, actively scanning in a full 360-degree radius beneath them. Once they detect a player, they'll become alerted for a short duration before sending up a beacon to call for Arc reinforcements. This can quickly turn a situation into a full-blown problem once Wasps and Hornets get called in en masse. Luckily, these aren't difficult to kill, since the 3 white panels that surround the core of the Snitch are actually unarmored thrusters. You can break these easily with any ammo type, but obviously the heavier the better, as you want to quickly dispatch the Snitch before it can get off its beacon. Looting a Snitch will almost always result in arc alloy, an arc power cell, and a Snitch scanner, which can be used like a grenade to deploy the Snitch's beacon on enemy players. Used at the right time, this can massively disrupt an enemy team, so don't count out stocking up on these items. If you ever hear this sound, and you aren't prepared to dive out of the way, say goodbye to your entire shield and a massive chunk of your health. Pops are suicide death balls, whose sole purpose is to detect players, then rush towards them and explode. They aren't hard to kill, and even light ammo will take them out in 1 to 2 shots, but the key is to blow them up before they can blow you up. Even if a pop is right on top of you, if you shoot or melee it before it gets off its detonation, you won't take a lick of damage, and that knowledge could save you in a pinch if they catch you off guard. Loot-wise, you can expect to find arc alloy, an arc power cell, a pop trigger, and even crude explosives, so keep that in mind if you're working on anything explosive-related back at your workshop. If you've ever been set on fire in Arc Raiders, I'm willing to bet it was most likely the result of a fireball. If left unchecked, their dual flamethrowers can quickly deplete your shields and health in just a matter of seconds. These enemies shrug off most light ammo, really only stopping in their ball form when hit with medium and heavy ammo. If you're looking to take them down, regardless of what ammo type or weapon you're using, hitting them right as they open their side panels to reveal their flamethrowers will allow you to dispatch them quickly. Just be warned, you don't want to be too close to these when they die, because they'll always spawn an AoE of fire, which can deal a sudden spike of damage. Looting them will often yield Arc Alloy, an Arc Power Cell, and the Fireball Burner, a quick-use item that functions like a smaller AoE Blaze Grenade, which is a great item for getting enemy players out of cover and into your team's line of sight. If you've ever seen the Arc enemy in the shape of a giant armored ball that seems more scared of you than you are of it, that's an Arc Surveyor. These enemies try to avoid raiders as best they can, stopping occasionally when undisturbed to extend an antenna and transmit signals, which is actually the best time to lob something like a heavy fuse grenade their direction, usually deleting them in one shot. If disturbed, they'll roll up and do their best to speed away like a loot goblin. However, if cornered and left with no other option, they'll rev up like Sonic the Hedgehog and launch themselves at your team, dealing significant damage if they hit anyone before running away. You're going to need medium or preferably heavy ammo to take these out. Breaking their armor will reveal a more lightly armored core, but keep in mind that each piece you break off is a lootable object. These small debris pieces will often contain Arc Alloy, Arc Motion Cores, and advanced Arc Power Cells, while the main body pieces will also commonly contain Arc Circuitry, Sensors, and Surveyor Vaults. These enemies are almost always worth cracking for their components, so keep an eye out for Topside's most elusive ball. Arc Raiders' pure nightmare fuel, the Leaper is a heavily armored, jumping spider-like bot from hell. Once they've detected a raider, they'll leap insane distances, attempting to land on their target, inflicting massive damage and knocking the player down. If that wasn't enough, they'll also send out a large kinetic energy pulse around them right after leaping that will finish off any raider unlucky enough to be hit by both attacks. If you aggro one of these, you best be prepared for a fight, or have a structure nearby to escape into. To deal with them, you have two options. The first is to either toss a Showstopper Grenade or Hornet Driver at them, temporarily stunning the enemy in place, allowing you to pump rounds into its eye and leg joint. This also sets up the opportunity to land something like a heavy fuse grenade near its core to quickly destroy the armor. The second and much more dangerous option is to simply come with medium or ideally heavy ammunition to hit those same weak spots, all while avoiding its attacks. If you do successfully take a Leaper down, each of its leg joints in addition to the core become lootable. In the legs, you'll often find Arc Alloy, Arc Performance Steel, advanced Arc Power Cells, and mechanical components. The main core can contain all of that in addition to Arc Flex Rubber and Explosive Compound. All pieces have a chance of containing the Leaper Pulse unit, with the main core having a consistently higher chance. This item isn't just for crafting. Like other unique Arc components, this one can be thrown, spawning the massive AoE kinetic pulse on unsuspecting raiders, dealing enough damage to break a blue shield and chunk their health. Leapers are tanky to fight, but if you have yourself a Wolfpack Grenade, these can also make short work of one of the more deadly enemies in the game. If you ever hear sustained Gatling fire, followed by the sound of raider flares popping off, you've stumbled near a Bastion. These are super heavily armored Arc units with a massive forward-mounted minigun that will absolutely shred through raiders in seconds if caught off guard. When a Bastion does catch you in the open, you're as good as dead. Fully intact, they're able to rotate quickly enough and will emit loud sounds, almost guaranteeing to attract other players in Arcs to your location. To take them down, aim for the yellow joints on its legs, as well as the yellow canister weak spot on its back. This will deal the most damage, often crippling the Bastion in the process. We strongly recommend using heavy ammo since it'll punch through their armored exteriors quicker, costing you less ammo in the process. If you can successfully remove 3 of the Bastion's legs, it'll have a much harder time walking or turning, allowing you to reliably get behind it and damage that critical spot, which eventually reveals the core where it takes the most damage. Like other elite enemies, Showstoppers and Hornet Drivers are your best friend for disabling the Bastion, allowing you to crack a few joints risk-free. When you successfully take down a Bastion, every leg joint in addition to the main body becomes lootable, and man are these things loaded. The legs will often contain Arc Alloy, Arc Power Cells, Arc Motion Cores, mechanical components, and Arc Circuitry, while the main body debris can also contain advanced Arc Power Cells, medium gun parts, and the elusive Bastion cells. Seriously, these are always worth taking down, and with practice comes efficiency, which will cut down on the players that will inevitably flock to your location. Raining down death with deadly precision, the Bombardier and its faithful spotter drones are a menace on any map. As the name suggests, the Bombardier is an artillery-focused unit that looks and moves similar to the Bastion, albeit with significantly less armor than its minigun-wielding counterpart. The spotter drones, which look like smaller, more nimble snitches, fly high above the area, spotting raiders and painting targets for the Bombardier to attack with insane precision. You can and should eliminate these every time they're deployed, which happens multiple times throughout the fight. Stay nimble, and whatever you do, don't stop moving when fighting a Bombardier, especially when its spotters are active. And you can forget about cheesing this enemy up close, because if the Bombardier detects a raider even remotely close by, it'll emit a high damage kinetic pulse in a large AoE, similar but much bigger to the Leapers. Surprisingly, the Bombardier is a lightly armored enemy, so you'll want to come to the fight with weapons that fire medium or heavy ammunition, and go after the typical arc weak spots, the leg joints and the crit spot on its rear. If you just so happen to have an epic hull cracker at your disposal, a couple well-placed shots can take it down in record time. Once defeated and you're able to take a break and loot some wreckage, you'll find arc alloy and spotter relays on the spotter drones, arc alloy, power cells, performance steel, advanced power cells, and mechanical components on the leg pieces, in addition to medium gun parts, Bombardier cells, and launcher ammo for the hull cracker on the chassis of the Bombardier. It's an enemy well worth taking down, if for nothing else, the valuable loot it holds. If you're looking for the true final boss of Arc Raiders, look no further than the Rocketeer, the reigning champion for Arc enemy with the most successful raid kills. If caught off guard, especially out in the open, these things will easily wipe a squad of players with just a couple shots. For that reason, you really want to engage these when you can find and maintain reliable cover, avoiding those unnecessary deaths. Just don't assume that because you're behind something, you're safe. These enemies can fly insanely fast, constantly reposition for an optimal angle, and it genuinely feels like they're getting smarter and smarter. Their weakness lies in their armored engines, meaning heavy ammo is the optimal way to deal with them. If you can successfully break off 2 of these, it'll fall to the ground, taking damage while continually trying to fire rockets, ultimately killing itself. While you can use cover and clink away at it with heavy weapons, there are 2 other options. The first is to hit it mid-air with a showstopper grenade or Hornet driver, disabling it and knocking it out of the sky temporarily. Depending on how high up it is, the fall alone can deal significant damage, and coupled with a bunch of heavy shots to those front engines, it'll explode in no time. The second option is to use 1 or 2 Wolfpack grenades. Throwing these into the air near the Rocketeer will cause them to detonate and split into a flurry of mini rockets that will pepper the nearest arc unit. If these all hit the Rocketeer, it's close to an instant kill, so if you're specifically hunting Rocketeer loot, consider bringing a few of these to the fight. In terms of loot, all the Rocketeer parts are lootable, with the engines often containing arc alloy, arc power cells, advanced arc power cells, and motion cores. The main body can have all that in addition to arc circuitry, heavy gun parts, and the elusive Rocketeer drivers used for crafting and upgrading. Come prepared to fight this enemy, because it is always prepared to fight back. The largest and arguably most deadly enemy in Arc Raiders, at least for now, is the Queen, which to our knowledge only shows up when the Harvester map event is active. If you're looking for a guide on how to complete the event easily, we have a handy video already up on the channel. If you plan on actually fighting the Queen, you're going to need to come prepared and have a very intentional plan where and how you fight it. You'll also want to strongly consider enlisting the help of other raiders on the map, which is easier said than done, I know. The Queen is the most heavily armored arc in the game, and because of this, using anything less than heavy ammo weapons and explosives is just a waste of resources. Sniper rifles like the Osprey can be effective, but only when targeting a very specific weak point at a very specific time during the fight. To our knowledge, the Queen has 2 primary weak spots. The first requires you to use heavy ammunition or explosives to break the armor off her legs, exposing yellow critical joints that can be targeted for increased damage, eventually breaking off entirely. The second weak spot is on the top of her head and is really only visible from higher elevations. When she charges up her laser beam, and for a short time after firing it, this will be exposed. Outside of hitting those weak spots, using heavy fuse grenades and snap blast grenades to detonate on her main hull will deal significant damage. You will need a metric ton of these grenades, but it is an option. In terms of where to fight her, you really just need a solid source of cover with a roof over your head. That's because the Queen will periodically fire off a barrage of missiles that will continuously try to land at your position, detonating after a short delay and blanketing a large area in fire. If you find a location where you can avoid the barrage, avoid the laser beam of death, and avoid her straight up stepping on you, all you need to do is have enough resources to survive while dealing enough damage to take her down. If you're successful, the Queen will fall, and it'll turn into a mad dash to loot the various parts before the PvP fighting breaks out over the massively valuable loot she holds. Her pieces contain nearly every ARC component there is in the game, in addition to advanced electrical and mechanical components, magnetic accelerators, and the extremely rare Queen Reactor. You'll need this if you ever want to craft the Equalizer for use in your raids, so set your sights high on this pinnacle challenge whenever the Harvester event is active on the map. Introduced as part of the Northline update, the Matriarch is bigger, badder, and more deadly than the Queen. First released on Dam Battlegrounds, then in Spaceport and Blue Gate, this massive arc moves faster than the Queen and has a more versatile arsenal to deal with raiders. Her first attack isn't an attack at all, and the Matriarch will use her control over arcs to call in reinforcements regularly. During our first kill, we had to contend with Bombardiers, Bastions, and even a Leaper that managed to reach our elevated position, and that's not to mention the Wasps, Hornets, and smaller enemies that were supporting her as well. The Matriarch also has a rocket barrage attack. These are self-propelled in a relatively straight line and usually come in sequences of 3 per barrage. If you're higher than the Matriarch, you'll be in a good position to avoid the explosions, but only if there's nothing behind you for the rockets to explode on. In addition to that, she has an artillery attack. When used, the Matriarch will send out 3 canisters of green poison that will explode into a cloud on impact. Like a Bombardier attack, these have a much more parabolic firing pattern, allowing the Matriarch to fire these off behind or directly on top of you if your positioning is bad. Her final ability is an electromagnetic shield where, for a period of time, she takes no damage from raider attacks. Shots, grenades, anything into the shield will have no effect, but the shield will eventually dissipate after some time. In terms of fighting the Matriarch, positioning is key. Elevating above the boss is essential not only to avoid the waves of supporting enemies she can call in, but because the higher up you are, the less effective her straight line rockets will be. Being above the boss also gives you the ability to throw wolfpack grenades more effectively, and that's key because once you knock off the armor plating around her central core, she'll be exposed, and you can lay into that weak spot to great effect. Like the Queen, she also has a weak spot at the knees, but they are double armor plated, just another option depending on your tactics. Once defeated, the race will be on to pick up the legendary Matriarch reactors that she drops, as well as her other loot. These can be used to craft Aphelion, a new legendary weapon introduced as part of the Northline update. First introduced on the Stellamontis map, the Shredder is a slow-moving, high burst damage arc that's a step in a different direction when compared against other enemies in the game. These levitating cylindrical enemies move slowly even when they're aggroed onto a target, but what they lack in speed they make up for in damage and defense. It's important to note that the Shredder is covered with armor plating, so most attacks are ineffective. Don't even bother with a weapon that uses light ammunition, as you won't make a dent in the arc, but medium and heavy weapons can get the job done. You might think its glowing eyes are the weak spot, but where you really want to aim for is the turbine that's keeping the Shredder suspended above ground. Targeting this will make for a much easier encounter, and we also recommend explosives. A snap blast or even heavy fuse grenade can deal substantial damage. As far as its offensive ability, the Shredder has a gnarly one. After a brief charge up, it'll shoot out a 360-degree sphere of shrapnel that will blast through your shield and a portion of your health. Just a couple hits from this attack and you'll be knocked, so don't take this enemy lightly. Once defeated, you can loot its unique part, the Shredder Gyro, which can be recycled into multiple mechanical parts, which is a fantastic conversion rate for an item you can reliably farm. So there you have it, everything you need to know about the enemies in Arc Raiders. We hope you found this guide helpful, and if you did, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. We'll have more Arc Raiders in your feed soon, so keep it here and never miss a thing. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.